The OCP Critical Facilities Operations Framework. This webinar will present the process of maintenance as part of this framework. We will start with a process overview, look at some lessons learned based on customer experiences, and end with final notes for you to consider when working with this process. The maintenance process is an on-site service as part of the framework. It is found on the right side of the slide that shows the delivery model. The framework itself is free to use and modify to fit your organization, and there's a separate webinar explaining where to find it and how to utilize that. The aim of maintenance is to keep the site robust and at the status of normal operation by replacing components under controlled conditions. That is, it's scheduled, budgeted, approved, and basically planned for, and risks are mitigated. So it's important to have a maintenance plan that is part of the overall annual planning. But as you will see here, as we talk through the different types of maintenance, you can also have what is called predictive maintenance or condition-based, which means that the schedule is not as important. It's actually the condition or the potential condition of the site systems or site system components that control the maintenance activities. But regardless of this, you still need, of course, to have a permit to work and schedule and approve these kind of on-site works to avoid risks of incidents or even disasters. At Corrective Group, the definitions of maintenance are described as reactive and proactive. These four categories reflect the OCP framework and follows the definitions described in the terminology of that guideline. The first one is corrective. So if you have corrective maintenance only and no planned preventive maintenance, you only carry out maintenance activities if you detect an anomaly or a problem so that you can restore to normal operations. The idea here is that by avoiding planned maintenance and only repair or replace assets as they break down, you will minimize your costs through only replacing when actually needing to replace them. The challenge, though, is that you have the risk of downtime and that the repairs will cost more than simply replacing under controlled conditions. So for critical facilities, it's not really realistic to have corrective only. On the other hand, combining corrective maintenance with preventive maintenance is quite a common approach. We are still within the left part of the slide here, which means that they are reactive. So preventive maintenance is schedule-based, that you decide how often you will do the service engagements. For example, having test cycles at a given interval or replacing components at a regular interval, regardless if they are in a good condition or a bad condition, they need to be replaced within a certain schedule. That means you lower the risk of having to perform corrective maintenance at high cost and with no planning. On the other hand, you still need to have corrective maintenance in case there is a problem or an incident. So what's the difference between reactive and proactive maintenance then? Well, the proactive maintenance, it is based on having a proactive approach where the planning and driving and controlling and follow-up is highly engaged through the site management function. So that could be a site management function owned and run by the site owner or the customer organization, or it could be outsourced to a supplier such as Cormatic or someone else. The point is that the site management ensures that the asset lists are up to date and that the condition of all site systems and site system components are up to date and reviewed, and thereby you provide a forecast for the exchange change of these components. So having an active budget and change out forecasting process for the assets of the site makes it possible to actually have condition-based maintenance. So that means that if it's in good condition, you don't need to replace the component, but you can actually run it a bit longer. But it's based on an active risk assessment or technical risk assessment of those components and systems on the site to minimize the risks of actual failures or incidents. The fourth type is the so-called predictive maintenance. That requires a monitoring system or a functionality, so an operations center that Chromatic offers or someone else offers. It could be in-house or outsourced, but the point is having a managed operating center ensures that you actually can have trend analysis and have active functionality with or without artificial intelligence to predict for how long you can run the component before it will break down. And it can also analyze, for example, the power consumption or changes in the environmental controls on humidity or temperatures, showing that, okay, something is wrong, we now need to go out and perform the maintenance before it breaks down, even though we expected this to be in good condition. So when managed well, this allows for drastically reduced long-term costs and minimizing occurrence of serious faults, while at the same time optimizing life cycle management and financial management. So predictive maintenance is a really good thing when it is well managed. And the reason that it's not always implemented is that can be a high threshold to learn how to optimize and handle these systems. And it also requires that the site systems and their components actually are logged and monitored with data collection and online connectivity to make sure that you can have the predictive analysis in collective databases. So, and that, of course, is a technical issue, but also a security matter to consider when you are working with critical facilities. The fourth type of maintenance, which is not described here, are when the work that you should perform is more complex or is larger and requires more time or more effort. And that's when it turns into a more formalized service project where you require a project manager and you have to ensure the blueprints are in place and everything is planned and all these kind of things. So it's more complexity and larger that drives it into a service project with perhaps a more formalized budget approval and so forth. Some lessons learned here is this is a site owner that has the largest site on a remote island, and their site works fantastically well even though it's more than 15 years old. What they've done here is that they handle their site as if it's a vintage car or a classic car. They work very much with condition-based maintenance and replace the components and exchange spare parts before the systems break down. So this is a site that serves several actors in the financial sector. So downtime is not an option. At the same time, it is an old site, but they have a very low running cost because of taking care of this. So the quote here from the site owner is that they'd rather have an old car they know and love than a new one that they need to replace every few years because the electronics break down and they aren't able to repair that. So that's how they consider this, being able to know and understand their site supplies, their site systems and site components is a good thing. Some final notes. A good thing to consider for the site management function is whether you should have one or several maintenance providers. If you split up the contracts, if these are outsourced, you can have the best experts in each area. So the best supplier of power distribution maintenance and the best supplier when it comes to security systems and so forth. At the same time, if you instead go the other way and say, no, I want a multi-supplier, multi-technology provider, the benefit of that may be that instead you will not have to have the same level of pre-planning and identify dependencies to mitigate potential tech issues between different service requests. Because if you have the same supplier, you can put a completely different level of expectation, and of course contractually if you want, that they need to coordinate and consider potential technical issues or risks where the maintenance in one system may affect another part of the systems in another technology area. So this is the sort of the philosophical way to consider whether you should have multiple expert suppliers or broader suppliers that cover several areas, which may not always have the highest expertise in every area, but on the other hand, there may be a lower risk of incidents or problems due to being better at coordinating across the different technology areas. And as always, this is regarding on-site works. So all maintenance is performed on-site with the technical systems, which means it should always include the updating and finalizing of the related documentation. I've already mentioned the asset list, but of course you have the site configuration procedures and technical manuals or instructions and so forth that may be updated when, for example, upgrading the firmware of systems and so forth. Hoping you will join us in another webinar for another process. Thank you.